Well, good afternoon, my friends. It is now 3 o'clock. The Trailblazers kick off their stretch run tonight. 28 games to go. 15 are at home, including tonight against the Denver Nuggets. Tip-off at 7. I'll have game day at 4:30 here in your home of the Blazers, 620 Rib City Radio. Unfortunately, Scoot Henderson is out tonight with a right adductor strain. Nuggets are favored by 8.5. After tonight, the Blazers will host the Hornets on Sunday. The city of Portland and the Trailblazers have reached a bridge agreement that will keep the team in Portland and at Moda Center into the foreseeable future. We'll have more on this story coming up on the Rip City Drive. The NFL saw an unprecedented rise in the salary cap this coming year, $30.6 million, giving teams just over $255 million to spend on players. Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad is coming up next. Blazer Game Day with Chad doing at 4:30. What's going on, my friends? Rip City Drive, Chad Doing and Dwight James. Happy to be with you on this Friday. We are separated today. Dwight's in studio. I am hanging out at Spirit Mountain Casino in Godfather tonight as the resident Bob Barker. I will be hosting the 50,000 Cool Cash spin, so we're going to have a big wheel.
Wow.
And we'll announce the winners at 7 o'clock, and they get to spin their wheel for their shot at 50,000 in cash. How does that sound?
Oh, I'm just trying to figure out how quickly I could get down there, Chad. 50 grand. Whoa.
That's right. Big times. Hanging out in the sports book. I wouldn't be surprised after that announcement that I'll see the godbrother, your brother, rolling in his Cadillac or whatever car he decides to drive down here. But we're excited for the show today. We have Blazer Game Day coming up at 4:30. Portland will kick off the second half of their season tonight. Game day at 4:30. Tip-off against the Nuggets at 7 o'clock. And you and I were talking about this yesterday, and I'm convinced of it. It sounds like you're on the same page. Right now, Boston in the East and Denver in the West look like clear favorites, right, Godfather?
Yeah, I think the Celtics they're in. I mean, and they're going to play well in the second half because you know what? Even if they get an injury, Chad, they're so deep. Yeah, it'll affect them, but it won't hurt them, you know. And I just think they might be the best team in the league. I might even like them more than Denver, and I like Denver a lot. But I just like the depth that the Celtics have, and I think they're good enough to overcome their head coach this year.
Well, I just think that it goes back to what you were saying yesterday. I think with the Nuggets, once you get over the hump and win a championship, I've seen this in all sports, there's a different level of confidence, more importantly, an understanding of what it takes to execute to win a championship. And I think the Nuggets are going to be better prepared to do that. And I think Coach Malone has got, just the right feel for his team. He knows when to get on them, how to motivate them, when to call them out, and when to back off. And he's got veteran leadership. And, of course, right now the best player on the planet in Nikola Jokic. I just like that combination. The Nuggets are no different than any other team in the league. All of this is provided that health stays for these teams, right? You can't afford to lose a big-time star. The Nuggets need both Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, just like the Celtics need Brown and Tatum. But if those two teams are healthy, I just don't see another team in the conferences they're in that can take them out. I think in the East, Milwaukee's got issues, particularly on defense right now. They're trying to sort through some things. The Knicks, I think, have had a good season, but they're not great. Same thing with the Cavs. And in the Western Conference, I love what Minnesota and Oklahoma City have done this year, but they have to prove that they can do it in the postseason. I think the Clippers are unique and can cause some issues, and I think the Suns could cause a little bit of issues, but I just think Denver's the best. So I would expect those two teams to meet in the finals. I would expect it. I want Milwaukee out of the East because I like to see Dame in the finals. I think it'd be fun for the city of Portland to be able to watch that, but I just don't think. I think Boston's a juggernaut right now, and the proof is in the pudding. They've dominated competition, so far this season. So I would expect them and Denver both to start to crank it up. You know how it goes. They've got just under 2 months left in the season. You'll see these teams really start to zero in and focus in on what needs to be done and start to take off. So I'm with you 100%. Boston and Denver, until we see otherwise, look like the two teams that will meet in the finals.
Yeah, and Chad, let's talk about Boston for a second. Back when they got Porzingis in the offseason, you and I both thought that was a great move. Well, you know what? We were right. And a whole bunch of people kind of diminish that move like it wasn't any big deal. He was the perfect guy for them. Another three-point shooter and a goaltender under the basket, an absolute rim protector. And if they can keep that guy healthy, that's a difference maker right there. And they already had, the two stars you mentioned. And so I think it makes them double tough. And as far as Denver's concerned, Ric Flair used to say, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And somebody's going to have to go on the floor and beat the Nuggets. And that's going to be a tough call, especially, I think, those two young teams, OKC and Minnesota. I'd like to see them make some sort of a deep run first before they can go all the way to the NBA Finals. That's a tough one to do. I know the Trailblazers did it back in 1977. First time they were ever in the playoffs. Went all the way and won a title. Very rare, though. And I think you need that experience to find out how much tougher it is in each succeeding round of the playoffs. Because you've seen it, Chad. Every time you take another step, it's more of a grinder. And the whole impact of playing that many games has an effect on your team, too.
All right, coming up on the show, we'll get to the bridge agreement between the city of Portland and the Trailblazers coming up here at 3:20. We've got an update on Nike and Fanatics and the issues they're having with the pants for baseball players. That's coming up at 3:45. And we'll deal more with what Chauncey Billups is challenged with over the next 28 games coming up at 4 o'clock. But the other big news today, Godfather, we all know the NFL is king right now in terms of viewership, fan support. I mean, they were getting record numbers for the playoffs, and they're coming off the most-watched Super Bowl in the history of the event. And today they announced the salary cap figures for the upcoming season. It's going to be just over $255 million for each team, but it's an increase of $30.6 million, which is an astronomical number. And I think you brought up the proper question. What teams is that going to help the most? And I think there are two examples. It's going to help teams like Denver, who are cash-strapped with big cap charges coming from guys like Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
But how about a team like Kansas City that's trying to keep it together as much as they can and make a run at a three-peat? That's a huge number for the NFL. But now maybe the Chiefs have an opportunity to be able to put a deal on the table for a guy like Chris Jones or L'Jarius Sneed where they can keep it together and make that legit run at a three-peat. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it is, Chad. And, I was reading about this a few days ago, and I know teams were projecting that it would go up. But I think what I saw was mostly the projections were about 10 million less than that. And those were kind of optimistic projections, I felt. But
yeah,
this is a real windfall for these teams. And there's some partying going on in front offices all over the league because some of these teams like Green Bay, they've got all kinds of cap room. Detroit now all of a sudden has room to add some players to an already good team. So it's going to help everybody get better. And usually when that happens, nobody gets a real advantage because everyone is going to take a big step up, I think.
Yeah, the big story that I think continues to be an issue for the NFL players, Godfather, with the type of money that the league is bringing in, I mean, just they're a dominant force and just billions of dollars. And the TV money is ridiculous. The biggest thing the players have got to find a way to push for, and I don't know if they can ever get this done when it comes to collectively bargaining, but they've got to get their hands on guaranteed contracts. It is unbelievable to me that you play the most violent sport known to man, and yet you're the one sport, the players, who don't have access to the guaranteed money. Now, sure, a few quarterbacks do, but everyone else who's at risk every time they take the field, they don't have the guaranteed contracts like the NBA players or Major League Baseball players do, and I think it's a travesty, and I don't know how they get it done because you know how the owners are, they stay together when it comes to bargaining, and they usually crush the players. But, man, you would think with that type of money, they've got to find a way to get the players guaranteed dollars to better take care of themselves with a violent sport.
Yeah, Chad, I think their union needs to bring in some sort of big-time leadership that can help them stay together, create a plan where they can have a solid strike fund so that they can be out for maybe even a season. If that's what it takes. I mean, baseball did that, and man, did it help them. And NBA guys have had long strikes, and that has helped them. But you can't have guys who can't even walk when they're in their 40s. They're putting you said it, lives on the line, and their ability to move around this earth on the line for the kind of money they're making. They deserve more and a bigger piece of the pie. Their cap space is nice, but they got to get a bigger share than that.
Well, Godfather, you've known, you've had friends and people you know that played professional football, and I worked with Lo Neal for a few years down in the Bay Area, and I would look at his hands all the time because he played fullback, and I'm like, Lo, do you have a functioning finger on your hand, for crying out loud? Like his hand were destroyed. You're dealing with body issues, obviously the head trauma that you face when you play football. I mean, that's why these players deserve better access to guaranteed dollars because of the risk that they put themselves out every time they take the field. And so I'm a big proponent of players in this because I love the NFL, but I also acknowledge it's a violent sport, and the players have been getting the shaft for years. And the problem is, and I don't know if they can create a fund, but what happens is the big-time players, guys like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes, or pick your quarterback, or the big-time stars with money, they can sit out for an extended period of time and miss game checks, and it doesn't impact their life or their family's life. What happens is when you have all of these other guys, and there's a lot of them in the NFL, you get these guys at the bottom of the salary scale who aren't making a lot of money, who really depend on the season and the game checks that come in to provide for their family. After they miss a couple of those checks, they start to panic, and that's why the players can't stay together with solidarity when it comes to the bargaining, and the owners can because they're billionaires. So maybe they can create a fund or have, some type of cash reserve to help those players at the bottom of the scale to be able to withstand the type of financial impact that it would take to potentially sit out a season and get what they need through the bargaining process. But that's been the big issue, is because so many guys don't make the big dollars in the NFL, and they need those game checks once the season begins to provide for their family.
Yeah, and when people hear what you say about Lo Neal, I sometimes think people don't really understand. They know about CTE. They know the dangers of concussions. But at the very least, some guy playing 5 years in the league, I've been around these guys. I've seen these guys. A lot of them can barely walk, even though they played only 5 or 6 years in the league. But your knees, your hips, your back, all those things take a terrible beating. People have no idea. It is not a contact sport. It is a collision sport. When you're on the field like we've been and seen it up close, you realize how hard the hitting is by very large human beings bent on doing damage. And it's just a shame. I feel for these guys, Chad, honestly, because at its base, it's a pretty barbaric sport. And it's Christians versus lions a lot of times. So I'd love to see him get a little more money out of this.
All right, we'll keep things rolling. Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. When we come back, the announcement that came out today, there is a bottom line piece of good news for all you Trailblazer fans out there, but we'll dive into the bridge agreement with the Blazers and the city of Portland, the pros and the cons, and we'll take a look at that, and also what it means long-term for the NBA and the West Coast. All right, you can reach out to Dwight on X, at Dwight James. You'll find me there at Chad and Rip City. Telephone number 503-248-0620. Blazers and Nuggets coming up at 7. I'll have game day at 4:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, Godfather, the news that came out today, the city of Portland and the Portland Trailblazers have reached a bridge agreement, which is going to keep the team in town into the foreseeable future. I think the initial terms are a 5-year agreement, but I think that's a good place to start because I think Trailblazer fans worry the most about the team leaving town. And I think the perception that's been out there for years, and you know this because you've dealt with it, you've got, people from Seattle who have been involved in ownership for years. The perception is that the owners care more about Seattle than they do Portland. And without a team in Seattle, the thought process has been that the team would wind up in Seattle and become the Supersonics. And now you and I both know that that's so unlikely to happen because the NBA does not want this team to leave this market. And I think that's a good place to start. The team's going to be here. I don't think it's going anywhere. And based on everyone I've talked to, and I believe everyone you've spoken with, like the NBA needs the Trailblazers in Portland, and they don't want them to go anywhere. So I think people can rest at ease knowing that the Trailblazers are going to be a part of Portland probably forever, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any sign of any reason to move a team out of Portland. It's considered one of the pillars of the NBA. It's been in the league a long time. It's the only team in the Pacific Northwest. Now, that's going to change soon. I will tell you first, nobody in the league office wants Portland to move. Second of all, everybody in the NBA knows this to be fact. I'll say this because you can say, well, it's Dwight's opinion. This is known as fact around the NBA. There's going to be expansion as soon as we get the TV deals out of the way. Expansion is going to be a team in Seattle. It's probably going to be owned by the group that Wally Walker is heading, and that's a group that's had a lot to do with the renovation of Key Arena. And then there's going to be a team in Las Vegas, and the league is very hopeful that the owner of that team in Las Vegas will be LeBron James. Everybody says that. They want another former player owning a team. He wants to own a team. He's been public about saying he wants to own a team in Las Vegas. You and I both know, Chad, this team was never going to move, but fans persisted in the kind of paranoia that I think it's easy to fall prey to, but it's not going to Seattle. It'll be here. The only thing that's going to happen, hopefully, at some point, is new ownership.
Yeah. Now, in addition to that, and this is critical here, in addition to the expansion of Seattle and Las Vegas both getting teams, then the NBA can look at the entire landscape and they can go through a realignment process, right, where you have true teams from the West in the Western Conference, true teams from the East in the Eastern Conference, and then with the expansion of Las Vegas and Seattle, then you can create those regional rivalries, which I think are critical for a sport. The I-5 rivalry between Seattle and Portland. Obviously, Las Vegas will be in close proximity, so they would become a rival. And then you've got the teams in L.A. and San Francisco, also the Phoenix Suns. So it just makes a lot of sense long-term for the league. Keep your team in Portland, expand to Seattle, get a team in Las Vegas, and then you've got an opportunity to realign, and then you create those regional rivalries.
You know, Chad, I'm glad you mentioned that. I should have mentioned that first time around. But exactly. This gives them an opportunity to kind of correct a bad position and get the East in the East and the West in the West. Because we have teams that don't belong in the West, and there they are, and this is perfect. And these are the right two teams. Seattle deserves a team. Shouldn't have lost the team in the first place, but it was a variety of factors, and I'm not going to blame David Stern totally on that. I think some of it was Seattle's fault. But the fact is, that's the way it's going to go. I think it's a big reason why Key Arena was renovated in the first place. It wasn't just for the Kraken. It was the idea of having hockey and basketball back in Seattle.
All right, with the bridge agreement, it's going to be a 5-year term. What I'm wondering is when the team is sold according to the trust and the way it was set up by Paul Allen, how do you think new owners will view the Moda Center, and will they look at an opportunity to build a new arena somewhere else in town? How is that process going to play out?
Here's what I'm hearing, Chad, and I know people involved in two different groups that are trying to buy the team. There are several more groups that I don't know. I've heard as many as 10 groups are interested in buying this team. So there are a lot of suitors out there. I would say this. I think a new owner would be happy that the agreement is only 5 years. They would not want to see a 10-year or, heaven forbid, a 20-year agreement where they had to somehow stay there. And I think they would love the option of coming in and saying, yeah, we'll try it for a year or two, but if it doesn't work for us, we're going to look into the prospects of having an arena in the suburbs. And that's the way it's going in all of pro sports right now, where you can get out, have some property. We talk about it with the baseball stadium, the idea of having a development around your arena so that it becomes a real estate deal and you're not as dependent upon basketball to pay all the bills. So it's being done in baseball, basketball, football, everywhere right now. So I think they want that option, and a 5-year deal would give them the opportunity to buy property, put things down on a drawing board somewhere, and then erect the arena. The timing would be just about perfect. So I think for that reason, I would love to see them just stay with that 5-year bridge agreement. I think it's smart. I think it might even make a purchase of the Trailblazers more attractive to a possible buyer than if you had the 10 or 20-year agreement.
Yeah, you don't want to be locked in for a long period of time.
Yeah,
Now, my question would be this. If a new arena does come sometime in the future, it sounds like you're describing the west side of town.
Yes, that's what I keep hearing. And it's just, you follow the money. And I hate to say it. I'm a Southeast guy, Chad, born and raised. But the fact is, people look at the demographics and say, you know what, the money's on the west side. That's your customers.
All right. Now, the other part of this bridge agreement that I think has gotten the most attention is there would be a $1 agreement where the Blazers would sell Moda Center to the city for $1. What's your take on that?
Well, Chad, I think that's okay if, in fact, there are accommodations made for the renovations that are on schedule for the Moda Center. You see, the Moda Center is the oldest remaining arena in the NBA that hasn't had the major renovation that arenas need to get by the time they're 25 to 30 years old. That's just what you have to do. They don't have a shelf life of 100 years. They're not going to last, and you need to do things. There's earthquake requirements. There's things you need to do in terms of amenities, the different, more comfortable seats, maybe changing around where the suites are to make them more saleable, club-level accommodations. All those things that probably are done with new arenas need to be done in renovations of existing ones. And you don't want, if you're the city of Portland, you don't want to get stuck with those kind of bills being the landlord. And all I need to do is point to Memorial Coliseum, where the city owns that building, and it's a cash drain on the city. Operating the Coliseum now, they're just not getting enough revenue to pay the bills of keeping that thing open. And you don't want to see the city getting into the same problem with the Rose Garden, or Moda Center, if you will. It's just it has the potential in a bigger building to be a bigger problem if indeed it comes to that.
Well, I assume with this announcement that came out, what the council is going to vote next week, I'm assuming that they already know what the vote's going to be, right? That there's an agreement in place. The vote's going to go their way.
Yes, good politicians, just like a good prosecutor or defense attorney, they know what the answer to the question is before they ask the question, or they wouldn't even ask it. So, yeah, I think you're right, Chad. The two negotiators were the mayor and then Dwayne Hankins of the Trailblazers. And kudos to Dwayne, one of our guy who appears on here all the time, listens to the show. He's terrific, and I give him a lot of credit because negotiating with the city of Portland, I think most of the citizens around here know that isn't the most easy thing to do. And if they got an agreement, kudos to Dwayne for getting it, because that's a big deal, Chad.
If you can negotiate and get something done with the city of Portland, you can accomplish anything.
Yes. Send him over to the Ukraine and see if he can get a ceasefire over there with the Russians.
There's no question about it. All right. So, I mean, you've been covering this for years. What has been the big issue with being able to come up with a plan to make that area around Moda Center viable, to have an entertainment district, or to have – what's the issue there? Why have they not been able to solve that problem?
Well, Chad, remember when it first opened, there were some nice restaurants, a couple of places.
Yeah, Kachina.
Yeah.
I used to hit that all the time.
And a Friday front row, that was a good sports bar. They had those things there, and they did very well on game nights. The problem was you couldn't get anyone there on a non-game night or at night when the building was dark. You know, no concerts, anything like that. So that is a problem, and I think – something that you put there has to be bigger than what they have now. You've got to use some of that parking lot space to bring in more attractive, whether it's a Hard Rock Cafe, whether it's, I don't know what it has to be, but you have to bring better retail, clubs, I don't know, museums, whatever you want to put there that are magnets. And my problem with what they have now, Chad, is that those businesses that are in the Rose Quarter face the arena, but they don't face the outside to people on the MAX train, people driving by. So you have no lure there. You have no signage. You don't have anything there to tell people, hey, let's stop in here at Friday's Front Row or Kachina. Kachina, a lot of people don't even know it's there or that it's open. So that could be dealt with too, I think. And I remember, too, when it was open, they had to close, I think, at midnight, which after a game night is not late enough. We used to go to Friday's Front Row, the writers, after the games, and it seemed like we would just sit down and they were making last call. And so you got to be able to be open a little bit later, and that takes work with the neighborhood association. But you have to do all these things to make it more viable, or it's just not going to work.
Yeah, there's a lot of places like that. Even in Denver, with the new Mile High Stadium that's been there since 2001. The stadium's beautiful, but it sits in a place in town where there's nothing around it.
Yeah.
So unless there's a game or an event, no one else has any other reason to be down there. You've been a big fan of Atlanta and what they were able to do. What did they create down there?
A total entertainment location. Yeah, it's unbelievable. They have condos, restaurants, clubs. They have great retail there. Every kind of business that is associated with sports is in there, whether it's a sporting goods store, a place like Baseballism. There is even a Topgolf in there. They have all these things so that you mediate your traffic problems, too, because people come to the game. They don't necessarily go home right after the game. They stay longer in the arena until the game ends. Then they go across the street and get something to eat. They get a little snack. They have a drink. Maybe they do some dancing, whatever they do. Maybe there's some entertainment over there, a live band, a comedian, whatever. But it keeps people in the area longer, and they go there before the games, so the traffic going into the games starts earlier and isn't as thick as it might be an hour before the game. So there's a lot of advantages to doing that, and it makes it more of a destination even for people coming from out of town. I like to go there because there's a Marriott property right in that district. I can stay right there and walk to the ballpark every night. Easy walk and stop somewhere for dinner on the way. It's just perfect. And the guys that own the Cubs, they got Wrigleyville now. They've bought all that territory around the ballpark and have fixed it up to make it work with Wrigley Field. So, and it's happening all over sports. So it's really, I think you're going to see that a lot more. And any new arena stadium being built should be associated with that kind of development.
Well, they've got the same thing down in Glendale. They built that football stadium where the Cardinals play way outside of town in Glendale. So it's a bit of a hike to get out there, like 30 minutes outside of the city. But out there, they've got that outdoor shopping center that's built right next to the stadium. So you can go over there and you can go shopping. They've got plenty of restaurants. You can sit down and get something to eat if you get there early before a game. And then just across the parking lot, they've got that outdoor, the outlet malls where you can go shopping. They've got more restaurants and different, things that you can do around that area either before or after a game, which is kind of nice. And they've even got the arena down there where the Coyotes play. So it's kind of a cool setup. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about there. You've got to create these with an idea of having not just a stadium, but development around it to make it a destination point so people will go there and spend their time in that area and make the most of it. even during the off season when there's no games being played.
Yes, exactly. Very successful.
So basically what you're saying is the site where Moda Center's at's not the spot to do it then. Like that's just not going to work there.
It can be done. They've looked into it in the past, and I think they had a great opportunity a few years ago when the developers who did LA Live, which is great, near
it's cool.
Staples Center, they are crypto now. They wanted to do that kind of thing in Portland, but nobody went for it. Nobody bought into it. The city didn't seem to like it. But you have to find a way to do something like that. And I think they could do it over there at Moda, but there has to be the will to pay for it. And you have to be able to see a profit coming from that, or you're not going to pay for it.
Yeah, even when I was down last year during the summertime, I went down for that Dodger-Yankee series. In the evening time, I walked from my hotel at a couple of blocks down to LA Live, and that place was hopping. Because they got a lot of restaurant options. So I went down to get something to eat down there. There were people hanging out. They got the movie theater down there. So, and that was during
rink.
they got the skating rink, and that was during the summertime. There's no basketball being played, and there was nothing going on at crypto, but yet that whole area was packed with people.
Yeah,
it worked.
Yeah.
All right. So would you suggest that the city might want to think otherwise about owning that site?
Yeah, Chad, I would take a good hard look at it because you already got one money pit in that district right now, and that's the Coliseum, which should have been torn down but wasn't. And you just don't want to have a bigger building right there too that you can't fill up and you're losing a lot of money on it. So just be careful would be my advice, and hopefully the city will be careful when it comes to taking ownership of a big building like that that's likely to need a lot of upkeep.
So what if I'm hearing you correctly, your fear would be this: you enter into this bridge agreement, and then let's say 5 to 10 years from now, new ownership comes in for the Trailblazers. They end up building a new arena on the west side of town, and then the city is stuck with the Moda Center that's not going to be able to have access to the same type of events and other activities that the new arena would, and then they're sitting there with the Coliseum and the Moda Center, and what do you do at that point, right?
Yeah, Chad. I mean, just think about it. If there were a new plush arena built somewhere in this area,
that would get the events.
Yeah, they would get everything. All the good concerts would go there. So you're taking second fiddle over at Moda Center, and that's not enough to keep the lights on, and it's going to be a problem. So I would try to insulate myself from that kind of situation if I were the city.
All right, Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. Godfather, do we have an update on the awkward pants situation in baseball that we can get to coming up next?
We have a plan for it, Chad. Yes, no more see-through pants by opening day is the plan.
But what about for those who want the see-through pants?
Well, I don't know. There's some websites, Chad, I think you could try, but I don't know. Hopefully they'll get the situation resolved because you don't want your high-priced players exposing themselves in public.
Well, Nike's got some smart people that design gear. I think they'll be able to figure out, hopefully. We also learned something new about Fanatics that we didn't know yesterday, so we'll get to that coming up next. Michael Shacker is at Moda Center. I'm live here at Spirit Mountain Casino getting ready for the 50,000 Cool Cash Spin coming up tonight at 7. So if you're in the area, come on down and say hi. Trailblazers going to tip off against the defending champion Nuggets at 7, and I've got Gameday, which will kick off at 4:30. You've got the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. All right, coming up at 4, we have a Super Bowl wager update that's pretty ridiculous, but it's also pretty genius, too. Some guy was willing to think things out, and he made off with some nice profit. We'll get to that coming up at 4. We've got an update on the Major League debacle with the pants involving Fanatics and Nike, and I had one of my friends reach out who is a former baseball player godfather, and he said, what if the catcher has runs? Those pants are not going to hide it. And I think that's a very valid point, a little bit graphic, but that happens during an extended inning, godfather, when you're down in a crouched position from time to time.
Yeah, by runs, you're not talking about a guy crossing home plate. Is that correct?
No, not those type of runs.
I just want
the kind where you're in a squat position. It's an extended inning. It's hot outside. Maybe your stomach is churning, and you let one out, and you think, uh-oh, that's a problem. One of those type of deals.
Oh, man.
They got to solve the issue, godfather, with the pants. So what's the latest? Oh, by the way, did we find out that Fanatics actually is involved in the manufacturing process of the pants?
Yeah, and that's what I read today, that Fanatics is actually the one making the pants. That's where you can get in trouble because they're accustomed to making, they make knockoffs, basically. A lot of those uniforms that you buy on Fanatics, you got to pay a lot to get the real thing. Most of these replica jerseys that they sell are a little cheaper than what the players are wearing. And these pants are like 1-ply, and normally you get like a 2-ply if you're going to be sliding around the bases and running around and everything. So the problem has been that they're see-through. Let's just cut to the chase. They're see-through pants, and the players don't like them. They're tired of them. Not only see-through, but they show every bump and cranny, and anyway, could be embarrassing or not embarrassing to certain players. But apparently, there is a move being made behind the scenes to get these players appropriate drawers to wear opening day. Get them some pants by opening day. And players are hopeful, but apparently representatives from Nike and Fanatics are touring the team's bases in spring training and finding out that what they're giving out is not acceptable.
All right, what I don't understand is how did you get to a point where you have see-through pants? Like, how can you actually design pants and not notice during the design process that these might be see-through? How does that happen?
Isn't that an amazing situation where didn't anybody look at these? Now, Nike is saying they're the same pants as last year. Well, I saw games last year. These are not the same pants as last year. If you see these guys in pictures or on video, you can see through and see, oh, yeah, that guy's wearing polka dot undershorts or whatever. You can see these things. You could never see these things before. So don't try and tell me it's the same stuff. It's not.
But do you think they'll be able to solve it before the start of the regular season? So they've got, a few weeks now, spring training. Are they going to get this solved by the time the season begins?
I don't think there's any reason why you can't get some pants made for, 400 Major League Baseball players in time for, you got like a month to do it. I mean, come on, let's go. That shouldn't be that big of a problem, actually. I don't understand how it happened, how they've gotten this far with it, but it's got to be remedied because it's going to be a very embarrassing situation. I also wonder if those would hold up. Guys slide and they get spiked and uniforms get sliced open. It's not a good situation.
All right, here's a question for you. I think Yamamoto may pitch for the Dodgers on Sunday. Mm-hmm. What are you going to be looking for in the Japanese pitcher as he makes his adjustment to the Major League game?
I'm trying not to look at his pants, actually, but that's the first thing. I want to see, with the pitchers from over there, it's often not the velocity, but it's the ball movement. Most of the guys who pitched in that league over there have tremendous ball movement. They can make the ball go both ways across the plate. They can make it sink. It's incredible what they do over there because they don't often throw as hard. They're not in the mid-90s to high 90s, but they get players out with trickery and with ball movement. So I'm going to be looking to see what kind of stuff he has. Uh, but it's early in spring training, so the first time out, you don't look at much of anything. You just want to see what a guy's motion looks like. Does he look sound fundamentally? Does he hide the ball a little bit? Will it be tough to hit, tough to see? Those are the kinds of things. I'm really looking forward to watching a pitch, though, I'll tell you that.
All right. Jim Bimrose has chimed in. He's got a legitimate question.
Oh.
Hey, Chad, do the batters start out with 2 balls, no strikes, wearing those pants?
Well, I'm going to leave that to you to answer, Chad. I had a couple really nice answers.
What if they just have 1 ball? Then I guess it'd be 1 ball and no strikes. My guess is that a lot of the baseball players, I mean, these are guys that do naked pull-ups in the clubhouse. My guess is the majority of players do not have an issue wearing see-through pants when they step up to the plate. They probably think it's hilarious.
Yeah.
And now you guys would challenge each other to see what type of ridiculous underwear or whatever else they can put on that can be picked up on the television camera. You know how those baseball players operate. They're wild.
Yeah. Some of them are very proud of their bodies. Put it that way.
Did you ever see Lou Piniella during your time with the Beavers doing naked pull-ups in the clubhouse?
I don't think I saw Lou doing that. At that point of his career, I'm not sure he could do very many pull-ups, but he was young.
What was the craziest thing you saw in the clubhouse working with the Beavers?
Some of them I couldn't really tell you on the air, but players in the clubhouse were absolutely unafraid to walk around stark naked, even when there's reporters in there. And in those days, there weren't females reporters in there. You know, it was just other guys, but still, I don't want to see other guys naked. It's not something I'm looking for. But these guys, they had no problem. They wore shower shoes and no clothes. Honestly, that's not good.
That's the way they roll. That's why they're not going to have an issue wearing see-through pants out there.
Chad, you were in clubhouses in the big leagues. You saw it, right?
It was the best, man. Like Mad Bum, all those guys. No, it was the best because I think a lot of guys would do it. They would be naked for as long as possible, like butt naked, because they were they would have little ways of trying to keep the press away from them as long as possible. So they would just stay naked, and people felt awkward going over there and putting a microphone up on them. So, they would do things like that.
Well, Chad, I'm sure you saw clubhouses after games where they had a spread laid out on a table. And
yes.
I have to say that I did see a couple instances where they weren't careful about what they made contact with on the table.
No, of course not. No, they're not going to do that. Dude, the Giants were the absolute best, man. Their clubhouse was amazing. The spread was amazing, the way they took care of the players. And then you could just walk into the clubhouse. You would wait for guys to get their clothes on. You could just roll up on them and start talking to them, man. It was a great setup. It was easy to communicate with the guys because how they had everything set up in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
But it was great after wins because guys were, especially after playoff wins, guys were going crazy. They were all in a good mood and stuff.
Baseball.
You'd hear things in a clubhouse that you don't hear in a lot of other places.
Yeah, that's for sure. But baseball's one of the last remaining outposts of freedom of interviews. You go in there before the game and guys are available. They'll talk, sure. I mean, it's great. It's a great sport to cover because you really do get a chance to speak to whoever you want and even get them by themselves once in a while.
All right, Rip City Drive, Dwight and Chad. Game day's coming up at 4:30. Tip-off with the Nuggets will be at 7 o'clock. Travis Demers and Michael Holton on the call. When we come back, we'll dive into the latest with the Trailblazers lineup and some of the challenges that Chauncey Billups is faced with 28 games to go and more data needed to be uncovered by the team. So we'll get into that. And we also got an update on an incredible Super Bowl wager that a guy cashed in on. You got the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad. All right, what's going on? The Trailblazers kick off their stretch run tonight. 28 games to go. 15 are at home, including tonight against the Denver Nuggets. Tip-off will be at 7, and I've got Blazers Game Day coming up at 4:30 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Unfortunately, Scoot Henderson is out tonight with a right adductor strain. The Nuggets are favored by 8.5. After tonight, the Blazers will host the Hornets at Moda Center on Sunday. The city of Portland and the Trailblazers have reached a bridge agreement that will keep the team in Portland and at Moda Center into the foreseeable future. The NFL has seen an unprecedented rise in the salary cap coming up this season. Each team will get $30.6 million in additional dollars to add to their cap, taking the total cap over $255 million to spend on players. More of the Rip City Drive with Dwight and Chad is coming at you right now. All right, we'll get to Chauncey Billups here in just a moment, but Godfather, you got to tell me about this Super Bowl wager with this crazy guy that cashed in. What went down?
Well, you got to have some guts to make this bet, Chad, but there was apparently a streaker. If you're watching on TV, you don't even know that probably because they don't show him on TV. But there was a Super Bowl streaker, and he was a local Las Vegas guy. He had placed a $50,000 bet that there'd be a streaker at the Super Bowl. So guess what he did? He became that streaker. He ran on the field by himself, and guess what? He cashed out with $374,000, and then he paid a $1,000 fine for being a streaker.
That is truly incredible. $374,000 minus the $1,000 fine for streaking, and he was able to cash in. So I'm assuming when he went back to the sports book, he did not identify himself as a streaker, correct?
I would guess that's true, Chad. That's probably last time a casino would probably put that on the board, don't you think? I mean,
but that's actually a genius plan. Like, if you know that you're going to streak and you've got the balls to be able to jump out and do that, then I'm just in amazement by that. I'm just surprised that the casino somehow didn't know who he was and the fact he was a streaker, and they're like, yeah, we're not cashing that in. Sorry.
Well, you talk about a bet that's a sure thing. That's the most sure thing I've ever seen. And, you know, even if they knew he was the guy, can they get out of that? I mean, they said there was going to be a streaker. There was a streaker. Just because
that is amazing.
Just because it was him, does that nullify the bet? I don't know.
Let me ask you a question seriously. Would you streak if you knew that someone was going to pay you $374,000? Would you get naked and run out on the field at the Super Bowl?
No, I don't think that's enough.
Yeah, I would.
Would you?
Yeah, I would. If someone said, here's a check, all you have to do is drop trowel and then run around on the field at the Super Bowl, I'm in. I'll do it. It's going to be embarrassing, and I'm going to suffer in the short term, but if I knew that $374,000 check was sitting there waiting for me and I was going to be able to cash in, I think I could talk myself into doing something crazy like that. Yes.
Well, the classic, too, is, Chad, you know, he wouldn't have even had to do it himself. I'm sure he could have found somebody that would have done it for like $5,000. You know yourself, there are people, yeah, run on the field, I'd do it for $500. But $5,000? Sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, but the problem is, what if that person chickens out and you got a $50,000 bet in the balance?
Well, then you do it yourself.
Yeah, you got to make sure you're at the game, and it's like, okay, if this guy falls through, because a lot of times guys do that all the time. Like, dude, I got you, I'll do it, man, no problem. And then they back out, and you're screwed. You would have to be at the game to make sure that you could be the final line of defense in case your boy backs out on you.
The other thing is I think you have to be in an area where you know good and well you can actually get on the field because, you know, a lot of stadiums, that's not an easy thing to do to get down there. There's a lot of security.
So he probably paid, I would like to know how much money he paid for the ticket and whereabouts he was located because he probably spent, you know, to be down there close to the field where you can actually gain access and be able to jump on there naked real quick. You got to be close, so you could end up spending $25,000 on a ticket. But still, even if you minus that out of the total, and let's say you walk away with $300,000, that's still a nice sizable chunk.
Yeah.
Jeez. Oh my goodness.
It was
All right.
genius. It was genius.
Ooh, that's big time right there. All right, Trailblazers and Nuggets tonight. We've talked about this over the last week. The big story to watch over the final 28 games is, and it goes back to what Chauncey Billups was saying before the All-Star break, that they're going to play Scoot. He's going to start the rest of the way, and they're going to play him with Ant. And they want these two guys to be in different situations, on ball and off ball, and they really want to pay attention to the work that Ant does working off ball. And it's something I talked about with Ant yesterday at the practice facility. And, of course, one of the big problems for the Trailblazers this year and Coach Chauncey Billups has been the lack of continuity in their lineup. They are like second last check in the league at games lost to injury. Plus, I think they lead the league in games played by rookies. So they've had guys in and out of the lineup. They haven't had continuity. They haven't been able to settle on a lineup, and it's been a big fiasco. And before we got the news that Scoot was out tonight, Chauncey was asked about the continuity yesterday at practice.
That's become like a normal thing that I hate, but that would be awesome, for us to be able to get some stability with our roster and with who's playing. I think there's been some times this year when we have had guys consistently, and man, we start playing so much better, and then bam, this guy's out, that guy's out. You just never know. So I would love that. That would be a lot of fun for us as we continue to keep trying to build.
All right, shortly after he said that, Godfather, we got word that Scoot Henderson was going to be out for the game tonight with the adductor strain. So it's once again a roadblock in front of Billups and his staff in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with the players. So I guess my question to you is, how do you navigate the next 28 games? Obviously, you want Scoot and Ant to be on the floor as much as possible, but when you don't have that, the main thing you want to be able to watch and identify, I mean, what else are you trying to accomplish the rest of the way with this group?
Well, it's like I would suggest that you can try Ant off the ball with somebody else playing the point, and they've got some bench guys who can come in and play the point, and let him do that there just to see what that looks like without Scoot. And I'm just trying to make the best of a bad situation because they need that data. You pointed it out. You're absolutely correct. They need to see these things in order to make a long-term decision here. So, I think we all think eventually it's going to be Anthony Simons that gets dealt, and it might be this summer. But you want to make sure you're making the right call on this, and it's really difficult for the coaches and the front office to make that call without seeing some more of it. They just haven't seen enough. And I think they started the season wanting to see Shaedon Sharpe and Scoot together, but Shaedon's missed, a large part of the season.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for any of the young players who miss an extended period because this is such a valuable time to be on the floor and have a chance to play and continue to work on your craft. And the other issue for Ant now is because my guess is tonight it will be Matisse Thybulle and Anthony Simons in the backcourt. You're starting two guards. But the other issue is that the only other guard they have off the bench right now that can run the offense would be, they got two guys. You could go with Delano Banton or with Ashton Hagans, who just signed the two-way deal with the Trailblazers, and you could take that pathway, but then you've got Ant working off ball with guys who are not experienced in running the offense, and so it doesn't put him in a good position. And I think that's been part of the issue with what they've been trying to do this year with development is that, a lot of times the roster that they have out there or the inexperience that they have on the floor, it makes it difficult for the other guys who are more experienced to be able to get into position to get good looks and to be able to run the offense. You know what I'm saying? Because like Ashton Hagans has been here now for a few weeks, but he still doesn't know all of the, their plays and their offensive sets and everything that they want to accomplish. So it's unfortunate for Ant. My guess is tonight with Ant, he'll probably end up being on the ball most of the night in that situation without Scoot.
Yeah, it's going to be, but what can you do? It's injuries. And, I'm sure these are real injuries. We've seen the last 2 years injuries when maybe there weren't real injuries. But I think in this case, they need these guys on the floor. And certainly they're not. And you just have to bite the bullet, Chad. I mean, you want Scoot out there, but it's not happening. So you got to wait and hope and give him great treatment and hope that it doesn't last long. I would say on the adductor sprains, we've seen a lot of those this year, and I think I'd be searching for preventative stretching and things like that you could do to maybe cut back some on those injuries. I don't know enough about physiology and kinesiology to be able to tell you how common those are, but I never heard much about them until this year. And now all of a sudden there's an avalanche of them, and it's too bad. You'd like to prevent some of these.
You need to check in with Dr. Nancy to find out what's going on with adductors.
Yeah.
Adductor strains, adductor issues. My guess is, with Scoot, and it's probably the smart thing to do, if there's any type of tweak or something that, where he doesn't feel right, then why risk it? Just get him the rest, let him take a day off, get more rest, and maybe he'll be out there on Sunday. But for me as a fan or someone that wants to watch a basketball game, the most exciting thing for me right now with the Blazers is Scoot Henderson, watching him play, watching his development, seeing the improvement in his game over the last few weeks. Like he's one of those guys that I want to tune in and watch. I want to focus on because I like him and I know how important it is for him to cash in and be big time for the Trailblazers. But I mean, over the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's played much better basketball. So it sucks he's not out there because I want to watch it, Godfather. I like him.
Yeah,
I like Scoot.
The fans believe the same thing you do, Chad. I think it's interesting, though. You saw him at practice yesterday shooting foul shots, right? Didn't you? Did he look?
Yeah,
did you see any sign of it? Was there a limp or anything like that?
No, he looked fine. No, he was putting up shots. He looked fine. But, I think a lot of these teams, it goes back to, what we were talking about with, load management and players not playing a full allotment of games like it used to be in the past. And I asked you where it started, and you said it probably started with the teams being a lot more cautious with their players. And that's why I think in today's, game, I just think teams are being a lot more cautious when it comes to these type of things that pop up because they want to protect their investment and they don't want something, a strain or some type of irritation to turn into a more serious problem. So I think teams now are just much more cautious with guys than what we've seen in the past.
I don't think there's any doubt. I think that's a good explanation for it, too. You miss a game or two now so that he doesn't miss 10 games later on. And that's the trade-off that you're always thinking about, for sure. And players are examined more thoroughly now than they ever were in the old days, and I'm totally convinced they played hurt a lot in the old days. Whether that was right or wrong, I'm not sure. But you did see guys' careers, cut short because they were hurt. And it was a terrible injury that kept, cut their career short. So maybe by doing this, you gain a year or two on the end of the career.
Well, the other thing, too, is you got to look at the stakes, right? If it were a playoff series, do I think Scoot would play with an adductor strain? Yes, probably. But when you're, starting the second half of the season with 28 games to go and you've got 15 wins, I mean, I think you have to look at the situation and say, is this worth the risk? And under the circumstances, like, no, just let him, get another couple of days off, and then we'll reevaluate on Sunday to see if he can play. I think if it were a playoff series, I don't think an adductor strain would keep a guy out of the lineup. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and I think that's absolutely right. And it's better to be cautious than crazy.
All right, we'll keep things rolling here on the Rip City Drive. Game day's coming up at 4:30. Tip-off with the Blazers and Nuggets at 7 here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City. All right, Godfather, what do you got planned for the weekend? The weather's going to be nice, brother.
Yeah, that's what I hear, Chad. I think some long walks maybe would be good. Maybe get up to the driving range if my back feels okay, and take the clubs out just for the first time and see what's in there. And bang a few golf balls around.
I'm excited. Tomorrow I've got a haircut, and then after that I've got 30 minutes of golf practice followed by lessons. So tomorrow will be a golf Saturday for me. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Are you excited
Very
about
nice.
the hair? Are you excited about the haircut too?
I am. Yes, I got a spot in downtown Portland that I hit, so I'll hit that, and then I'll head out to a golf tech. So that's my Saturday. That's what's on my agenda for tomorrow. But I'm going to be tempted to get out there. Like today, when I was driving out here, 60 degrees outside and partly sunny skies. I mean, that's pretty good for February here in the Northwest.
The
problem is I know it's not going to last. We got more rain coming, but yeah, this weekend's supposed to be nice. So you got to love that. I'm down.
I'm ready.
I'm jonesing to play a lot of golf. That's basically what's going on. I'm just jonesing. I need it, Godfather. I need it.
Get out there tomorrow and play. What are you waiting for?
Well, because I've got the lesson and the haircut. I can't. I'm one of those people where it's like I don't like to alter haircut days because if it gets my schedule off, then it's hard to get in. Every 3 weeks. I got to get the haircut every 3 weeks. My hair grows too fast.
Wow.
I know that I'm speaking of things you're not familiar with, but I've got a hair growth issue, which is a good thing to have.
Yeah, growing too fast is a great problem.
I hope it lasts. I hope it continues. All right. Blazers, Nuggets coming up at 7 o'clock. Charlotte will be in town on Sunday. That game will tip off at 6 o'clock. The Godfather likes both Denver and Boston to cruise to their respective conferences. We don't see any issues there. The NFL flush with cash as teams now get $30.6 million more added to the salary cap, which is ridiculous. And that's where we're at. That is where we're at. What are you looking for tonight, from the Trailblazers? Aside from, we were talking with Aaron Finchers yesterday. Aside from Ant and Scoot, and they're playing there the rest of the way, I think the other big thing to watch is DeAndre Ayton and whether or not they can continue to do a good job of getting him engaged early so that good play can continue because, like Scoot, he's strung together now multiple weeks of productive play. I want to see more of that from him.
It'll be interesting watching the way Denver handles Ayton. How they do at both ends of the floor with him. Are they going to bring him out to the high post with Joker and then drive past him, or is he going to go to the low block and take him right to the basket? And then at the other end, what's Ayton going to do with Joker? I would think that's a tough matchup for Ayton because Joker is not a great defender, but he can come out on the floor on you a little bit and get his hand up on those jump shots from mid-range. I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. And then after that, I think if you're a Blazer fan, you cross your fingers, hope for the best, and hope that a bunch of three-pointers go in because that's going to be their salvation in a game like this, where they're overmatched talent-wise. Let's face it.
All right, so when Ayton, like we've seen the last few weeks, when he's engaged and productive, when he's playing at his best, do you like his game? What are your thoughts when he's playing at his best?
I think this year, in the last maybe month, Chad, is the best I've seen him play. I think he's playing very well lately, and it's going to be interesting the rest of the way to see if he can hold on to that and see what's going on with that. And he seems to be energized a little bit, whether that's Chauncey Billups, whether it's just the situation, or maybe even playing with Scoot. That's been good for him. Scoot sees him, gets him the ball a little more maybe than he was getting it before. So it's going to be interesting to see down the stretch of the season whether that holds up or not. That's very important, I think, for his future here in Portland.
I wonder how hard that adjustment's been for him. We've heard about Dame and how the struggles he's had adapting and adjusting to Milwaukee and new teammates, new surroundings and everything. But I wonder if it's hard for a guy like Ayton, too, a vet who played with one team in the Suns. Then he comes up here, and you're playing with some youngsters. You got some vets, but you've had guys in and out of the lineup, and he hasn't been able to develop continuity to a large degree with guys like Scoot and Ant. I would imagine that type of an adjustment is difficult for a veteran player.
Yeah, and it's really difficult, too. You talked about the injury situation and how tough it's been on Chauncey Billups. Trust me, every guy out there on the floor has had to make those same adjustments with teammates. it's difficult for them too. And I think for a player dependent upon other guys getting him the ball, like your bigs are, especially your centers, really tough for him because people aren't going to see him as well as a normal, everyday, every night point guard would. So it's hard on DeAndre Ayton. He's not sure when he's getting the ball, if he's going to get it in the right situations. So you got to cut him some slack here a little bit because this is a rough time for him too.
All right, Godfather. Well, I hope you get out there on the range and take advantage of the beautiful facility you've got there at Willamette Valley and enjoy the sunshine. And I'm still adjusting to, life after football. Like, it's just weird when you go through that period where you're used to football all the time, and now it's like I'm looking for other things to drive interest in. And it's just tough with college basketball. Like, I try to get into it, but the game is so inferior compared to the NBA. It's tough.
Yeah.
It's not even close to the same thing. It's not the same, Godfather.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. One thing tonight, Oregon State baseball against number 2 in the country, Arkansas, from Globe Life Field in Texas where the Rangers play. That's a big matchup for them. KEX has the game tonight at 5. That's a big one for the Beavers.
All right. Well, Godfather, enjoy your weekend. We'll be back together on Monday. Coming up next is Blazers Game Day. We'll have 90 minutes to set the table for you as we get ready for the Nuggets and Blazers coming up tonight at 7 here on 620 Rip City Radio. Later. Well, good afternoon, my friends. This is Blazers Game Day. I am your host, Chad Doing, and tonight the Trailblazers kick off the stretch run of their season. 28 games to go. 15 of those are at home, and that starts tonight against the defending champion Denver Nuggets. Tip-off's coming up at 7. Travis Demers and Michael Holton will have the call, and I'll be with you all the way up until 6 when we kick it over to Curtis Long, who will have your Trailblazer pregame show across the Trailblazers radio network. The Blazers, after tonight, will be back home to host the Charlotte Hornets on Sunday with a tip time on Sunday at 6 o'clock. Coming up on the show, we're going to get into What's the Scoot in 15 minutes, and we'll focus in on Scoot Henderson and the latest with him. I'll have the complete injury report here in a couple of minutes. At 5:15, we're going to head down to Moda Center and check in with Chauncey Billups as he has a chance to address the media before tonight's game against Denver. Also, the Coors Light Cold Hard Facts and your keys to the game. So the Trailblazers are entering into a critical stretch of the season, not in terms of wins and losses or playoff positioning, but really trying to uncover as much data about their roster as they possibly can so they can make decisions on who's going to be here moving into the future long term, who's not. And the big summer facing them is they have a chance to go out there and make something happen. You know, the one thing that Joe Cronin has done a very good job of in a short period of time is creating flexibility. There's more flexibility with cap space right now. They've got draft picks to work with, and they've also got veteran pieces on the roster, some pieces that are not likely to be here long term and can be utilized to go out and acquire more young players as they continue to rebuild this roster. Now, one of the key stories, and I think the key story that the Trailblazers are going to be faced with the rest of the way, is the play of Scoot and Ant. We got word from Chauncey Billups before the All-Star break that Scoot Henderson had worked his way back into the starting lineup, and he was going to play next to Anthony Simons. And Chauncey Billups and his staff were going to place each of those guys in positions where they could work on ball, where obviously they're strongest as point guards, but also put them in situations where they're working without the ball in their hands so they can work off ball, learn how to move, how to come off screens, how to put themselves in a position to be impactful offensively without having the ball in their hands. And, you know, it's tough. I was talking with Dwight yesterday, and the real challenge with, you know, NBA players now at the guard position, for guys that are not accustomed to moving and learning to play without ball, it's a difficult process. And it goes back to their younger days of getting involved in the game and with the way things have gone with AAU ball. If you're Anthony Simons or Damian Lillard or Scoot Henderson, when these guys were young kids, they were more than likely the best basketball player on their teams at a very young age. And so therefore, they had the ball in their hands. And through AAU ball, through college, or through the G League, you know, they grow up all those years playing with the basketball in their hands. They're not working in a system where they're expected to move and do different things. And so I think in some ways it hurts the development of, you know, some of these guards because they only know how to play it one way. And then when you get into more structure or you're expected to run an offense or be a part of an offense that's different than what you're accustomed to, they just haven't been in those type of situations. And it's not their fault. It's just a product of what the system is creating right now. I do think it's great for guys to be as versatile as possible. So learning how to play off ball, learning how to make an impact on the offense when you don't have the ball in your hands. You know, I mean, Steph Curry's made a living of being able to move without the basketball. And his team and his system set up to get him shots without the ball in his hands. But when he has to, he can work with the ball in his hands and create his own shot and for his teammates. You know, be as versatile as possible. Be as dynamic on offense as you possibly can to make you harder to defend. I mean, you don't want to be a one-trick pony, and I think Chauncey Billups has, you know, encouraged his guys to continue to look at the game that way, that the more you can do, the more that you can develop in your game and an understanding of NBA defenses, I think it makes sense. Or as Chauncey has put it before, when you are bringing the ball up the court and you're the point guard with the ball in your hands, you've got 5 set of eyes on you. But when you are moving without the basketball and you don't have the ball in your hands, you've only got 1 set of eyes on you, meaning you can create more opportunities to get better shots and become even more impactful on offense. So that's where we're at. The Blazers want to get a long look at Scoot and Ant to see how that looks together, to see if Ant can, you know, really adapt and play off ball. How will Scoot handle those type of situations? I think it's critical as the Blazers take a look at their roster and what they have and trying to determine, what players are going to be here moving into the future long term and who won't be. But the big issue for Portland this year, I think the underlying issue, and, no one likes to talk about it. No one likes to use it as an excuse, but the Trailblazers have been impacted by injuries a great deal. The lack of continuity has really hampered the efforts of the coaching staff to get this team to play the way that they want them to play. It's hampered new guys, arrivals like DeAndre Ayton, because he's been unable to develop continuity with guys on the floor when he has played, because guys are in and out of the lineup. And it also hurts the development of the young players because, guys like Shaedon Sharpe haven't played much this year. Scoot Henderson has been in and out of the lineup. And it just prevents the group from being able to grow together because they haven't had the time on the floor to be able to develop that chemistry. And then on top of that, when you have different guys in and out of the lineup, some guys who lack experience, then it's hard to, stay connected defensively. It just throws all sorts of issues at you. And Chauncey Billups was asked by Aaron Finchers yesterday at practice about the lack of continuity and guys being in and out of the lineup. And this is before we got the news that Scoot was going to be out tonight. Here's Coach Billups.
A normal thing that I hate, but that would be awesome, for us to be able to get some stability with our roster and with who's playing. I think there's been some times this year when we have had guys consistently, and man, we start playing so much better, and then bam, this guy's out, that guy's out. You just never know. So I would love that. I would love that. That would be a lot of fun for us as we continue to keep trying to build.
All right, there's Coach Billups, and he just touched on it. It's hard to really develop anything when you have guys in and out of the lineup. Or like we've seen recently with the injuries at guard and with Malcolm Brogdon out, they've had youngsters like Delano Banton, who is a new arrival as of the trade deadline, and, of course, Ashton Higgins, who just yesterday was able to get a two-way deal with the Trailblazers after signing a 10-day deal. He's gotten a lot of minutes since his arrival right there at the deadline. But, again, inexperience and a lack of understanding of the offense and playing with guys that you don't have a lot of experience with. And this creates a big issue. So I think moving forward, the Blazers, hopefully, and I've been saying this now for a few weeks, but it would be nice if they could have some continuity with their lineup for 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, or I think there's like 7.5 weeks left in the season. It would be nice to have an extended stretch where you could have guys on the floor so you know what to expect. In regards to the injury report and what the Blazers are facing tonight, Malcolm Brogdon is out as he continues to deal with elbow tendonitis. Still no word or expectation on when he's going to return to the lineup. Obviously, Moses Brown is out with the wrist fracture. Scoot Henderson is out tonight with the left adductor strain. I don't think it's serious. Ryan Rupert is out with a right ankle sprain. And, of course, Robert Williams and Shaedon Sharpe are out. Williams done for the year with the knee ligament tear, and Sharpe had the core surgery. Chauncey Billups did say at practice yesterday that the hope is to get Shaedon back so he can play in some games before the end of the season. And it's unfortunate for Shaedon Sharpe, too, because he showed some flashes earlier in the year when he was playing on what he could do and what he was capable of. But, to miss a large chunk of the season, it just really retards the development of the young guys, being able to play together, develop some chemistry, and have a better understanding of what they can do in their game. And the other player who's questionable tonight is Jabari Walker. So the Blazers, once again, shorthanded as they get ready to take on the defending champion Denver Nuggets tonight at Moda Center. The other issue, I think, too, is, a lot of times if you have a number of guys out of the lineup and you've only got a couple of vets who are playing and you've got guys like Banton or even Higgins in the lineup, it's really hard to be able to evaluate what you got. I mean, you're just trying to piece together a lineup to make things happen, and I think that makes it tough on Billups and his staff to be able to really, extract data that can be useful moving forward. Because the one thing we have seen when they had that stretch, really, from the 4-game road trip on, shortly before the All-Star break, they had some continuity with the lineup where you knew who was going to be on the floor and who wasn't. And we started to see some better execution on offense, an uptick in passes per game, the assists per game. We saw guys playing with more confidence. Scoot really started to come into his own and take that next step in his development. and you start to see flashes of what it could be, and then all of a sudden, boom, guys are out of the lineup again. So, I mean, it is what it is, but I really want these young guys to have the best chance to succeed and develop, in particular with Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp. So I hate it when I see these guys out of the lineup. Not only that, but Scoot, excuse me, he is must-see television right now because he's starting to show flashes of why everyone loves him coming out of the G League, and now I want to watch him play because I like his demeanor. I like his energy and the way he plays. I like the way the game is slowing down. He's showing more burst and quickness and decision-making. Like, you can see the confidence starting to rise. You can tell that he's put in a lot of work individually on his shot. He's starting to look more like a professional shooter and develop more confidence in his offensive game. And I just want to continue to see that development. So, again, I don't think the Scoot injury is serious. I wouldn't be surprised if he played on Sunday, but he is going to be out tonight. And that takes one more game away where you have a chance to evaluate Scoot and Ant together in the backcourt. And, you know, the Blazers have decisions to make because they got a logjam there with Ant, Shaden, and Scoot. And so we'll see how things continue to, progress. But the one thing I do like I mentioned before, the flexibility that Joe Cronin has created will give them options to be able to go out there and make some maneuvers during the summertime, which I think is going to be great. After Scoot and Ant and those two guys playing together, I think the other important thing is the continued development with this team in this offense for DeAndre Ayton. He has played very well over the last few weeks. He's been dominant. He's been rebounding extremely well. He's been very aggressive on the offensive end and has been able to find some comfort level there, showing his mid-range game, his face-up jumper. And, you know, he did well in stretches against Minnesota and their bigs, especially Rudy Gobert. So I think it's important for the Trailblazers, regardless of who the guards are or who's on the floor, continue to make an effort to get him involved early so he can get engaged. And then once he gets going, I mean, we see what happens. He remains engaged. He's in attack mode, and he can be a productive force. And he's one of the veterans on this team and a viable option on the offensive end. So utilize him. And so I want to continue to see what Ayton can bring because it's important for the coaching staff to continue to understand his game, where he's most comfortable at, so they can devise ways to get him involved so he can continue to make an impact. Ayton, regardless of the reputation coming out of Phoenix, the reality is he's a number one overall pick. He's a very talented player, and it's tough to find a guy at his position at that size with that type of skill set. There aren't too many guys on the planet that can do what he does. So it's important for the Blazers to find a way to make him comfortable so that he can be as engaged as possible and be productive. Because when he is engaged and he's productive, you see the difference he makes for this team, which is nice. So that's where we're at. The Blazers getting ready to kick off the stretch run. 13 games on the road, 15 games at home, 28 games to go in about 7.5 weeks. And right now it's all about development and it's all about data, finding out what you have, which players you think are going to be a part of this team long term, and they'll continue to progress from there. All right, it's Blazers Game Day. Chad doing here. I am live at Spirit Mountain Casino. Tip-off is coming up at 7. Travis Demers and Michael Holton will have the call. When we come back, we'll jump into What's the Scoot, and we'll focus in on Scoot Henderson. And then at 5:15, we're going to hear live from Coach Billups as he prepares his team for the Denver Nuggets tonight. All right, everyone, Wang Chung tonight, including you, Michael Shacker. Blazers and Nuggets coming up at 7. It's Blazers game day, and I want to focus in on Scoot Henderson. He is out tonight with an adductor strain. I've heard more about adductors over the last couple of months than I think I ever have in my entire life. I know that I have a couple of machines that I do in my workouts to deal with the adductors, but it's really become a sore spot for the Portland Trailblazers. So no Scoot Henderson tonight with an adductor strain. Hopefully he'll be back on the floor Sunday when the Blazers take on the Hornets. But really, the key the rest of the way for Scoot Henderson is just continued development. He's played much better. He's taken that next step in his game over the last few weeks, which has been great to see. And all the things I've told you now over and over and over again is true. His demeanor and his attitude is terrific. The coaching staff loves the fact that he's engaged, has never once complained or pouted about anything regardless of role, whether he's on the bench, he's in the starting lineup. He doesn't play in the fourth quarter. He does play in the fourth quarter no matter what situation they put him in or what they've asked of him. He's been like, yes, sir, no, sir. He just goes out there and gets the job done. I like him because he oozes positivity. I like the way he operates. I'm just excited to see his continued development. I've got high hopes for Scoot, and I've seen some great flashes over the last couple of weeks. But the reason why this next 28 games is critical, and now 27 for Scoot because he's not going to play tonight. We'll see what his status is for Sunday. He needs to be on the floor with Ant, and they need to play together, both on ball and off ball, to see how that looks. And yesterday at practice, I had a chance to ask Ant about, working off ball, working with Scoot, and how that might look. Here's what he had to say.
Most part, just continue to develop my game, kind of off the ball a little bit more, and that's kind of what we talked about with Chauncey. Just, he knows that I'm pretty good on the ball, and I, obviously attract a lot of attention on the ball, with the ball in my hands. But he just emphasized that, it's going to be that much harder to guard when I'm able to do on the ball and off the ball, coming off, down screens, double screens, and, just running different off-ball actions for me in order for me to get open looks in that way, too. And then mixing it on the ball as well. So, that was kind of the emphasis, for the second half of the season, just working on that. Be good working with Scoot. They obviously another ball handler, good passer, to be able to set me up in those situations.
Well, what's the biggest challenge for someone like you who's so good on ball? That adjustment of learning to play off ball. What's the biggest challenge?
Obviously it's always going to be adjustment, but this whole season has been about learning for me. So, just another challenge or obstacle that I got to go through to get through, and I just know that I'm going to become a better player coming out of the situation. No matter if it's a good night, bad night, I know that I'm going to get better each and every night. I know the end goal of why I'm going through this. So that makes it that much, easier to try to get through.
Well, I appreciate Ant. One thing Anthony Simons has done, he's going out of his way. He wants Scoot Henderson to be comfortable when he's on the floor. And he understands the adjustment and how difficult it is to go from the G League and jump in and be a rookie in the NBA, because Ant, went through the same process. So Ant's being a good teammate by wanting to assist and help Scoot be comfortable. And Ant also understands the importance of trying to add to his game and adding another dimension and learn how to play off ball. So and the one thing you notice with these Trailblazers, especially with the young guys, and I even noticed it with Ant yesterday when he was, talking about Ashton Hagans and also Dewap Reef. Hagan's got the two-way contract, and Reef got a multi-year deal with the Blazers. These guys are big fans of one another. There's a certain connection with this group. They do get along and they support one another, and I think that's going to be helpful down the stretch as Ant and Scoot, really learn to try and figure things out there on the floor. And for Anthony, it's critical, learning to play off ball, put yourself in a position to get better looks, and then also be a product of the offense where guys understand where they need to be and how they need to set screens to open things up for Anthony Simons. So for Scoot Henderson, he's just got to continue to work in the film, work with the coaches, listen to his veteran teammates, put in the individual time and work on his shot and different aspects of his game. And for Ant, it's just continuing to embrace the challenge of playing with different guys on the floor, having the ball in his hands at times, playing off ball, and learning how to do those things. For Ant and for Scoot, they're both best with the ball in their hands. Obviously, that's what they're accustomed to. And now they've got to learn to make that adjustment. So it's tough. It's very challenging. But And I like all those guys. I'm a fan of Shaden. I'm a fan of Ant and his game. Obviously, I think he's the best player right now on the roster, and obviously with Scoot. And I want all those guys to thrive, and so I'm anxious to see what Anthony can do, particularly with Scoot on the floor. So that's why it's important that Scoot get back on the floor, and hopefully he can remain there, because the guys being in and out of the lineup is just brutal, absolutely brutal. And because you want these guys to have a chance to succeed, and the lack of continuity has been damaging at best, from these guys being able to, figure it out. And I think the other part for Ant, too, that's tough is that, he's learning how to adjust his game with these other guys. We saw it against Minnesota. I mean, he showed some frustration with the officiating like we've never seen before, because he feels like he's getting hit and not getting the respect of the officials. And also the difficulty with some of the lineups that he's on the floor with, and the lack of space that he has to operate with. He's going – I mean, this season has been very challenging for Ant. I think in the long run it's going to be much better for him. He's going to become a better player, and he's going to have more things added to his game. But, I mean, you can see the frustration there. It's been difficult, but those are the type of seasons or moments that you can learn a lot from and continue to grow. So we'll see how things shake out. Not easy to do it against the Denver Nuggets tonight. The Nuggets are in town. I didn't want to admit it, and I was resistant to buy into the Nuggets last year, but after watching their play throughout the course of the postseason and then winning a championship, I respect Michael Malone and the way he coaches his guys. He has a good understanding of his team. I think Nikola Jokic right now is probably the best player on the planet. He makes his teammates better. Jamal Murray is a great Robin to play alongside Jokic. They've got good role players who understand what their job is. And I just marvel at watching those guys play. There's a connection there and understanding because they've played together now for quite some time. They've got the chemistry, and you can just see the way they operate out there on the floor. So it's going to be fun tonight to watch Jokic and company, but also how the Blazers deal with that, because the Nuggets are probably going to start to crank up the intensity level just a little bit and really start to zero in on the things that they want to accomplish. So I am impressed with what I see from Denver. And I think right now, best team in the Western Conference, and it's really difficult when you take a look around the West at what teams can win 4 out of 7, in a 7-game series. Very difficult. So I like Denver right now. I would say in the Western Conference, Minnesota could give them some issues with their size. Phoenix possibly if they go small, and they got Kevin Durant at the 5. They've been unique. We'll see how that plays out. And the Clippers. That would appear to be the main contenders to Denver in the Western Conference. But I just don't know how serious of a contenders they will be against Denver come postseason time. When you look at the Eastern Conference, it's pretty obvious. It's Boston and nobody else. I can't imagine Boston not getting to the NBA Finals this year. That would be stunning. They're playing well. They're locked in defensively. They're doing a lot of things right. And you look at the East, Milwaukee's got issues. New York is good but not great. Same thing with Cleveland. And Philadelphia's got, a good coach and a good team, but Embiid's been out. So right now it looks like Boston and Denver. Of course, a lot can change with injuries and everything else, so we'll see how things shake out. But right now, I think those are the two best teams, and everyone else is chasing Denver and Boston as we head down the final stretch. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on Game Day. We're going to come back. I'll give you a scoreboard report. And then at 5:15, we're going to have Coach's Corner with Chauncey Billups. We'll hear from Coach, and he'll give you the latest on the lineup, and we'll find out who's starting tonight. Who's going to be a guard? Will it be Higgins and Ant? Will it be Banton? Will it be Thibault? We'll find out from Chauncey Billups at 5:15. I'm with you up until 6 o'clock. Curtis Long will take over at 6 with your Trailblazers pregame show, and then the tip-off at 7 with the Blazers and Nuggets here on 620 Rip City Radio. Stretch run has begun in the NBA, and we got a busy night in the association right now in Atlanta. First quarter nearing an end. The Raptors on top of the Hawks, 23-17. First quarter in Philadelphia. This game on ESPN. The Cavs lead the Sixers 23-22. Games coming up later on tonight. Here in a few minutes in Houston, the Suns and Rockets. Phoenix is favored by 2.5. They currently sit at 33-23. And the Rockets at 24-31. 5 o'clock tip in Memphis. The Clippers and Grizzlies, LA favored by 9.5. 5 o'clock tip down in Oklahoma City. Wizards and Thunder, OKC favored by 16.5. 5 o'clock tip in New Orleans, Heat and Pelicans. New Orleans a 1.5 point favorite. 7 o'clock tip on ESPN. The Bucks are in Minnesota to take on the Timberwolves. Minnesota favored by 4.5. 7 o'clock tip down in San Francisco. The Warriors at 28-26 host the Hornets, who will be in Portland on Sunday night. Golden State favored by 12.5, coming off their win over the Lakers. 7 o'clock tip at Moda Center, Nuggets and Trailblazers. Denver right now favored by 8.5. Jokic averaging 26 points, 12 rebounds, and 9 assists per game. And the nightcapper, 7:30 tip down in Los Angeles. The Spurs and Lakers. And LA right now favored by 10.5. And that is your scoreboard report here on Blazers Game Day. We're going to head down to the podium and hear from Chauncey Billups coming up at 5:15 and get the latest on the lineup, who's going to start, and his plans for the Denver Nuggets tonight. That's coming up in just over 10 minutes. We'll hear from Chauncey Billups. Now, I did want you to hear from one person in particular, and that would be Scoot Henderson. He's out tonight, but he had a chance to speak to the media, talked about his All-Star Weekend experience. But let's hear a little bit from Scoot.
How was your experience at All-Star?
It was good. Really cold though, but we had the Puma activation with Puma and Cheeto. That was fire, man. It's always a blessing to see my own shoes somewhere that I would never imagine. So.
I know you've done this a few times before because when you were in the G League, you were doing the Rising Star stuff. What's the difference in the experience, if there is one, doing it as a G League player versus doing it as an NBA player?
I feel like I wanted to come in this year, my third Rising Star, with a different approach, different mindset. It's always to go in there and have fun and, that killer mindset. But I think this year it just meant a little more to try to get at, players in your class and stuff like that. Rather than, the G League, it's more like you're trying to get a name. You're trying to boost your stock up as a G League player. So I feel like it's the same mentality as in, going out there and kill and, kill the opponent, but different as in players you're going against and players that you're playing throughout the season and stuff like that. But
who are some guys you like in this rookie class that you maybe got to see?
Man, this class is really deep. I like all the talent that we have. Especially in this class with all the top picks and stuff like that. Where we got Wemby, B. Mill, Keontae George, really proving a lot. Kaysen on Thunder, really efficient and a really important player on their team, part of their team, but it's really a lot of depth in this class.
How long did you stay?
I tried to get out there as quick as I could, so but the latest flight was 6:30, and I'm like, nah, I can't do that. But I got left like Sunday morning. Got up out of there. Nah, I tried to get out of there. I was with my family, it's always good to be with your family on a weekend like that at least, man. It was really fun though.
Is there anything else there you want to do someday? Dunk contest, skills?
Yeah. Dunk contest maybe one day. I was just talking, but maybe dunk contest.
It's not often you get an opportunity to be around as many young guys. Being in that kind of locker room with those guys, is there the week? Do you have any shared experiences or things you kind of learn from each other?
For sure. I think everybody's got something in common. Everybody got something in common. Everybody has their first view of the NBA, and you dream of it, but everybody doesn't go through the same thing at the same time. And, a lot of the players in the class are going through the same thing that, maybe I've been going through, or, I've been seeing them go through certain things. But I think it's just we share a lot of things, and especially just the view as a rookie, as a point guard sometimes, and as just a young person entering a very grown-up life by yourself or with your family, But it's still the same. You're in the NBA and you're young, so.
What do you hope to accomplish in the last 2 months?
All right, there's Scoot Henderson talking about his experience at All-Star Weekend. And like I said, and what I've said before about him, is just it's great to hear him talk and just his attitude and approach to the game. And my reason for optimism with Scoot is his willingness to work, his attitude, his approach, the way he listens, and not only that, but to hear the coaches and the way they praise him. I mean, it's truly amazing to me. So I've got a lot of high hopes for him. And also good news, too. Dave Deckard, our good friend from BlazersEdge.com, he's been on a lot recently. We've had a chance to talk about Blazers Edge Night, which is coming up March 13th when the Atlanta Hawks are in town. Everyone was able to step up, and because of your help and the people who stepped up and bought tickets, they hit the mark they were looking for, and there are going to be 1,700 children, youth, and adults who work with these underprivileged youth that would have no way to be able to go to a Trailblazer game without our help. And so these people are going to step up, and a lot of you did the same thing. 1,700 tickets, which is awesome. It's awesome. So big props to you. I thought you'd like to hear the update. Blazers Edge Night coming up on March 13th. All right, we're going to step aside, and when we come back, we will hear from Chauncey Billups in the Coach's Corner, and we'll get the latest on tonight's game and the lineup. I'm anxious to hear who's going to start tonight with Scoot out. My guess would be Ant and Thibault, but we'll get the latest from Coach Billups when we come back. All right, I'm Chad Doing. Tip-off coming up at 7 with the Blazers and Nuggets here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, so we're just a couple of minutes away from hearing from Chauncey Billups in the coach's corner, so we'll head down to the podium as soon as he starts talking. And as I mentioned before, big props to all of you and everyone who was a part of Blazers Edge Night. It's coming up on the 13th against the Atlanta Hawks. 1,700 underserved youth are going to be attending that game. That is freaking awesome. So I just wanted to say thank you because we've had Dave on talking about it a lot. I have promoted it myself, and I bought tickets for some of the kids, but I just wanted to say thank you. I talk about it a lot, but the power of radio, you guys hearing, we have a connection, there's a community here, and a lot of you reached out and were able to step up and buy tickets. So 1,700 kids that would have no ability to go to the game without our help. And so they're going to be there, which makes that night awesome. Because those kids, like, it is, you probably remember maybe it was your dad or mom or grandparent or uncle or, someone you knew that took you to your first game. And when you walked into an NBA arena for the first time, your mind was blown. And that's the way it was for me. I remember the first game I went to in Denver and had a chance to see the Nuggets play. I lived in Denver at the time, but McNichols Arena, walking in and going to an NBA game for the first time was a great experience. And so I'm happy these kids will have a chance to do the same thing. Also, Nikola Jokic, who's going to be in town tonight with the Denver Nuggets, became the 4th player in NBA history to record at least one triple-double against every opponent in the league. He went 10 for 10 from the floor, had 21 points, 19 rebounds, and 15 assists in Denver's 130-110 victory over the Wizards last night. That's pretty good. So the other players, the other 3 to accomplish that feat, LeBron, Russ, and Maurice Stokes. I would have thought Magic Johnson, but he wasn't on the list, so big props to Jokic. But that's who the Blazers are going to be facing tonight, Jokic and company. I just like the way he plays. He just makes guys around him better, very unselfish, and I think that type of unselfish play from him, it infects the entire team, and they're all willing to share the basketball. So it's going to be a tall test. For the Blazers tonight to go out and execute defensively to slow down their attack. That's why that Ayton-Jokic matchup tonight is going to be fun to watch, to see how Ayton responds to that and what he's able to do in that type of situation. Now, if you look at the NBA standings right now, I mentioned earlier that, Boston and Denver are kind of my 2 teams that I'm looking at to match up in the finals. Boston right now, 7 games in front of the second-place team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. Milwaukee is 9 games back in 3rd. And the Knicks, 10 games back in 4th. The rest of the teams, Philly, Indiana, Orlando, Miami, Chicago, and Atlanta. Boston is by far at 44-12, the best team in the East. And barring some type of catastrophic injury, I find it very hard to believe that another team this year in the East is going to be able to knock them out of the postseason. In the Western Conference, it's so wildly fascinating. Minnesota remains atop the West. We just saw them in back-to-back games at Moda before the All-Star break. Best defensive team in the NBA, and they're doing it differently with their size of Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns. Oklahoma City is 2nd, 1 game back. Clippers in 3rd, and I'll get back to the standings. But let's go and hear from Chauncey Billups right now in the coach's corner.
It had been kind of lingering, something that was kind of lingering with him for a little bit. And he was doing pretty good, and then I think he had a little tweaked it a little bit in that game, and yeah, he tweaked it a little bit in that game, and then he came back. I thought it was all fine, and then, in practice, you could just tell that he was laboring, and so I just wanted him to get it checked out,
At this point, are you worried about it being anything serious?
No, I'm not worried about that right now, but obviously, we'll see what happens going further, but I'm not worried about it right now, though.
You going to start Tease tonight, or you can go back to Ash?
No, actually, I'm going to start Chris. Yeah.
Chris.
And Chris to Jeremy D.A. I'm bringing Scott Hastings off the bench. I need a bruiser, baby. I need a bruiser. I need a bad boy.
What have you seen from Chris that leads you to this?
Well, I think Chris has just been playing well. His minutes have been kind of spotty, obviously, but he plays pretty good when he's in there. you know, and he provides, he gives us some pretty good size. He plays hard as heck. He plays the right way. So, you know, I want to see him out there. I want to see him do his thing.
Chris has said that one of the things he kind of prides himself on is you don't need to tell him stuff multiple times.
Mm-hmm.
Have you kind of felt that from him in his early growth, that he's a guy that you don't have to remind and kind of work with?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, after training camp, we always call him Mr. Perfect. You know, he don't make too many mistakes out there. You know, he's paying attention, man. He's paying attention, and he does things the way that we ask him to be done. You know, so yeah, I'm looking forward to him getting out there and playing, and hopefully, you know, he'll play well, because he most of the times does. And you know, I think his improvement area is obviously his shot. But what I'm more concerned with than anything is obviously, yeah, we want him to make them. But I just love that he's not shy at all. You know, if you open, just make the right decision, man, squeeze, play, shoot it, you know, or make the next play. I love that he plays really fast that way. And again, that's just him listening to what we're trying to do.
How does it work out positionally, or does that matter?
When you're shorthanded, you can't worry about them type of things, man. You just put them out there, you know. But obviously, you know, it gives us some pretty good size in the lineup. You know, he'll probably start off guarding Michael Porter, you know. So he's even small compared to him, you know. But yeah, I don't even really worry about that, you know. When you're shorthanded, you just gotta figure it out.
Chris has mentioned that in the beginning of the season his confidence kind of took a hit just because he wasn't knocking down shots.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he's gotten to the point where he's able to get past that, whether he's hitting shots or not, that he can still kind of be out there and be productive?
Man, Danny, I think he has. And the reason why I say that is because there's been some games where, you know, he's had opportunity after opportunity and he hadn't made shots. But, man, he's still in there offensive rebounding. He's getting steals. He's getting deflections. It hasn't impacted the rest of his game, you know. And he's the kid that's in there. I mean, I was in there this morning. He was in there before pretty much everybody getting shots up. Like, he's working on it, you know. And I love to see people that work on it do it. Whether it's going or not, if I see you working on it every day, man, I'm going to be mad if you don't shoot that, you know. So he's going. I'm not worried about Chris. Like, he's going to turn out to be a really good shooter in this league, and it's all based on his work habits.
Jabari available?
Jabari's available, yeah.
What's one thing you'd like to see your team do better this time against the Nuggets that maybe you didn't do in the first two?
Yeah, you know, I thought we played them pretty good, to be honest with you. Where we faltered at, our transition defense wasn't great. You know, you got to get back against them. Joker's always looking to throw it up the floor. But not only that, the biggest area was just our defensive rebounding. You know, that's a big team. And they crash every time. Bless you. And they crash every time. And, I mean, I think the first game they had 20 points, you know. Second chance, the second game they had 19. And I thought our defense was good. I think second game we held them to 112, which is great for them. And you give up 19 of those second chance. So we got to be better rebounding the ball against them and just our transition defense, and I think we'll give ourselves a chance.
Still a big step, but what does it mean to be a Hall of Fame finalist?
Man, it means a lot, you know. Obviously, it means a lot. For somebody like me, I played the game the right way, man. You know, I didn't play for stats. I played to try to win. I played for my teammates. And I just tried to be the best that I could. You know, I played as long as I could. I played as hard as I could. And, you know, it's good to just be considered, you know, and to be honored in that way, you know, when you've given your whole life to this game, you know. And I did it right. You know, I didn't chase anything. I tried to chase wins, you know. So I'm very honored by it. I'm very thankful and grateful by it. You know, obviously there's more work to do. There's another step left in the process, but I never even dreamed that big, bro. I really didn't. You know, I dreamed When I first started playing basketball, I just did it because nobody ever went to college in my family. So that was my way to make it because we couldn't afford to go. I had to get a scholarship. So I never even thought about Hall of Fame stuff. You know, I thought about going to college. And then when I got good enough to play good in college, I thought about maybe making pro. Made pro, you think about being an all-star, a champion. I never even thought Hall of Famer, you know. So I'm thankful, man. I'm definitely thankful. We good? All right.
All right, there's Coach Billups. So we're going to go with Ant and Chris Murray in the backcourt tonight. So, you know, Chris Murray is one of those young guys. You know, obviously he played, you know, college ball at Iowa, and it's kind of a family-type deal there where his dad also played there. But what I like about Chris is, you know, he stayed an extra year just to continue to get the experience and develop. Really smart. When you meet him, very engaging, very mature for his age, and someone that just likes the ball. And, you know, there's been that sibling rivalry with him and his brother Keegan, who's with the Kings, over the course of time. But, you know, I think that Chris Murray, while young and still needs time to develop, he's got a chance to develop into a very good role player because he's got the acumen to be able to shoot. And if you can shoot, and you heard what he said, what was it? Coach Bob said his nickname coming out of camp was Mr. Perfect. I mean, there's a great value in that when you have a player on the team that you don't have to repeat things to. You don't have to explain it over and over again. You say it once, the player understands it, and he's able to go out and execute that. Like, that's what coaches love. And you look at some of the guys on this roster, you know, the young guys, the character that they've been able to find with these guys like Scoot. I mean, Chauncey Billups was praising him before All-Star break when explaining why he deserves to be back in the starting lineup, because he's earned it, because he's worked his tail off, and he hasn't complained one single bit the entire season regardless of role. And then with Chris Murray, call him Mr. Perfect. He hears it, he understands it, and he's able to go out there and execute. And that's good. And when you do things like that, or you approach the game that way, or you make things easier on the coaches and you showcase that in practice, they're going to find ways to get you in the games or give you an opportunity to go out there and start. And I think it's great that the Trailblazers are going to use opportunities like this to be able to get some of the younger guys on the floor and give them a chance to play. I love it. Get Murray out there. Let him play. And, you know, the Blazers did play. Those two games they lost in Denver when they had the back-to-back against the Nuggets, they did play very well in those games. They were able to execute well. Scoot played well. They got some good production in that game. But as Coach said, the defensive rebounding was a problem, and then transition defense. And for the Blazers tonight, you might want to avoid the live ball turnovers, which Chauncey's been, you know, talking about throughout the course of the year, because the Nuggets, they have the ability to get out, run, and create havoc because they're so good. And it's nice to hear about Chauncey, you know, being a Hall of Famer. A great basketball career, big-time legend in the game, and he's an NBA champion, too. So props to him. I love to see it. But that's so we got that's who they're going to have out there tonight. Ant, Murray, Tamani, Grant, and Ayton. That'll be your starting lineup. And then Jabari is going to be available. He was listed as, I think, questionable, but he's available tonight. So Jabari's going to play, but that's your starting lineup. So props to Chris Murray for getting a chance to go, and hopefully Scoot. You heard from Billups, he doesn't think it's going to be serious, but he could tell in practice yesterday he was laboring with that adductor issue and thought he should go get checked out. So they're going to keep him out tonight, and hopefully Scoot will be back and ready to go on Sunday against the Charlotte Hornets and get a chance to play. Like I said, I want these young guys, you know, in particular Scoot Henderson on the floor so they have a chance to continue to play and develop. It's critical. All right, we'll keep things rolling here on Blazer Game Day. When we come back, it's time for the Coors Light Cold Hard Facts. Tip-off's coming up at 7, Blazers and Nuggets here on 620 Rip City Radio, your home of the Blazers. And at 6, we'll kick it over to Curtis Long, who will have your Trailblazer pregame show across the Trailblazer Radio Network. 7 o'clock, we're going to announce 5 winners, and our 5 winners will have a chance to play for cash prizes between 3 and the grand prize of $20,000 in cash. We have cash prizes tonight for our 5 winners of $3,000, $5,000, $7,000, $10,000, and the grand prize of $20,000 in cash. So what you're going to want to do is take your County Club card and stop by one of our kiosk machines that we have throughout the casino. Swipe your card and make sure you deposit your tickets into the drum for our drawing time tonight at 7. We're going to announce all 5 winners at 7. And if you hear your name and County Club number, you'll have 5 minutes to make your way to our drawing area located in the peak next to 10 Barrel Brewing and the Sports Book. And we'll kick things off at 7. 5 winners, and you're going to play for your chance at the grand prize of $20,000 in cash. So make sure you stop by one of our kiosk machines. We'll announce all 5 winners coming up at 7 o'clock. And also, just a reminder, next Thursday, the final day of February, the 29th, between 6 and 8 here at Spirit Mountain Casino, we have our payback drawings. 10 winners. All right, 2 things for you, and this is for the rest of the season. The most important thing to watch will be the play of Scoot Henderson and Anthony Simons when they're on the floor together, both on ball and off ball. That storyline and how it develops and how those 2 guys react to that type of situation is going to be critical for the Trailblazers as they get ready to move into the offseason and evaluate their roster and where they're at and which guys are going to be a part of that. Number 2, and I think the biggest storyline is DeAndre Ayton. Continuing to be on the floor, engaged and productive, and it's going to be important for the Trailblazers to continue to look for him early in games, get him involved, get him engaged, and allow him to get out there and be productive. They need him, and they really need him to cash in. You know, obviously you need Scoot Henderson to become something special and Shaedon Sharpe, but when you get a player with the talent level of a guy like, DeAndre Ayton, it's important that he's able to hopefully they can make that work. And it's been a struggle at times during this first year with Ayton, but he's shown flashes of what he can do over the last few weeks, and I want that to continue because it's hard to find guys of that size with that skill level around the NBA, and he's a former #1 pick. And that's the type of talent you want on this team. So I'm going to be paying attention to those two storylines, Scoot and Ant together on the floor, and how those guys adjust, especially Ant to being off ball in those situations where, Scoot's got the ball in his hands. And then for DeAndre Ayton, continuing to be engaged and really looking to be aggressive and to make an impact on this team. It's such a great opportunity for Ayton. I hope he capitalizes on it. If things didn't end well in Phoenix, there were certain narratives around him coming out of the Suns, and he's got a chance to right the ship here in Portland, with a team that desperately needs him to step up, and I hope he can do it. I really do, because I like him, and I know his teammates really like him, and I want to see him succeed, so I'm hoping that he can continue this recent play we've seen over the last few weeks where he's been engaged and he's been at times dominant for the Portland Trailblazers, and a tough matchup tonight with DeAndre Ayton taking on Nikola Jokic, who's arguably the best player on the planet. So, and the thing is, Jokic is tough, obviously, but he's not the best defender in the world, so Ayton's got a chance to go out there and put some pressure on him, which I think would be good. Also, one thing I did watch, and I would recommend if you haven't checked it out, the Blazers have this series that they're showing. It's available on their YouTube page, and I love their YouTube page because they got a lot of videos of, practice and post-game and different things up that I think you would enjoy. But they've got this series called The Trail, which is focusing in on the team in season. And this latest episode in Season 2 that's up on their YouTube page, I think it's Season 2, Episode 5, it goes inside a couple of different things. One, they spend a lot of time talking with Pooh Jeter, a former Portland Pilot who's now with the Trailblazers working in player development. And he spends a lot of time with Scoot Henderson. And of course they played the same position. Pooh was a point guard in college, and obviously Scoot's a point guard. But just getting a chance to hear Pooh Jeter talk about the process and the things that he does to help players, but in particular with Scoot, I think you'll enjoy hearing from him and just his insight on what he sees in Scoot, the way he works on his game, and the different types of things they're doing to bring his game along, which I think is critical. Also, a lot of audio from Matisse Thybulle, who was mic'd up throughout a course of a couple of games. Matisse Thybulle is one of the smartest guys on the team. He's a different type of thinker, not your typical jock by any stretch of the imagination, but very thoughtful, very insightful, and he's great mic'd up. And you can see when he's out there on the floor how much he's communicating, the type of conversations he's having with his teammates. I really enjoy seeing that because I'm a big fan of Matisse Thybulle. Smart basketball player, really smart. And he understands he's a defender, and he's a specialist in that area. And so his understanding of defense and the way he approaches that end of the floor is unique, and you can tell what it's like to have a teammate like Thybulle who understands defense so well and what he can do to help some of his teammates out. But the mic'd up stuff with Thybulle is really good. So Pooh Jeter in player development, excellent. Matisse Thybulle mic'd up is great. And then also they kind of go behind the scenes in that latest episode with the victory over Dame and the Milwaukee Bucks when they're in town at Moda Center. And it's kind of cool to see some of the things that Chauncey communicated to his players, some of the reaction from some of the guys as they went through that. But The Trail, very good show, and I'd recommend you check it out. And all you have to do is go to the Trailblazers YouTube page, and they've got all those videos up on a variety of different things, but also the Trail episodes up as well, which you can, check out and watch. And, I love getting stuck in YouTube mode on a regular basis, so it was just one of those things I came across and had a chance to watch. I would recommend checking it out. They've done a great job with The Trail, and it goes behind the scenes and gives you access to some of the conversations and players in maybe ways that you haven't seen before. And, I think it's been a challenging year for a lot of the guys on the team, but also for the coaching staff as they navigate a young roster. They're going through the first year of a rebuild, and they've had guys in and out of the lineup, and so you get a chance to see some of those challenges, maybe ways you didn't understand before. Trailblazers and Nuggets tonight. Looking forward to the game, for all the reasons I've mentioned before. One, because the Nuggets are the defending champs and so good, but I love seeing the young guys. Like Chris Murray getting a chance to start tonight. You're going to see other guys, the young guys, get a chance to play, but this is good for them. Getting their feet in the fire and going up against a team like Denver that is a true title contender that executes and plays the game the right way. It's good to be out there on the floor and go up against that type of challenge, and gives Billups a chance to coach these guys through that type of situation. You know, one thing we can't lose sight of for the young players and for the other guys who are going to be a part of this team, you know, moving into the extended future, you know, these are the type of moments that teams can grow from, especially the young players as they learn how to operate, how to defend, how to execute, how to go up against that type of pressure and do it against one of the best teams in the NBA. I like those type of situations for the young guys as they continue to press through the rest of the season. So I like it. And I like watching Denver play. Like I mentioned before, you know, they're that team in the Western Conference that I look at and I'm like, who's going to beat them in a 7-game series? Who's gonna beat them in a 7-game series? Minnesota's atop the West right now, 1 game in front of Oklahoma City. Minnesota and Oklahoma City have been right there at the top throughout the entire season. Clippers right now 2.5 back along with the Denver Nuggets. And then you've got New Orleans sitting there 5.5 back, and then Dallas at 6.5 back. Which of those teams are true contenders? Are Minnesota and Oklahoma City both true contenders in the Western Conference? Or do you look to the more veteran teams in the Clippers and the Phoenix Suns, who right now are 10 games over and have been playing better basketball of late? I mean, I don't know what to expect from Minnesota and Oklahoma City. I love the way they play. I love the way that they're coached. I love their rosters. But, you know, again, what I've learned over time, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, that, you know, a lot of times the NBA playoffs, very rarely do you have a team that just puts it together and makes it run through. It's kind of like a refining fire where you have to go through some playoff battles and some difficult losses before you learn what it takes to get over in those type of situations. And that's why I'm uncertain about Minnesota and Oklahoma City. Although I do like the fact that Minnesota is doing it in a different way. When everyone else is going small and playing small, the Timberwolves are going big and using their size, the twin towers of Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. And then they've got the star power of Anthony Edwards. And I like that. So I want to see how they execute. I want to see how they deal with teams that they'll match up with in the postseason who are going to try and hit them with maybe smaller lineups. And the way that they try to attack Gobert come playoff time, like that's going to be fun to watch. Yeah, the Golden State Warriors are playing better, but it's hard to see them with the issues they've had making a run through the Western Conference. And the Lakers have been playing better of late because they've been making more threes. They've got size as well. They can definitely be a matchup problem come playoff time, but I have a hard time seeing the Lakers make it through the West. So my guess would be right now it's Denver and then the Clippers and potentially the Phoenix Suns who would create the most problem for the Nuggets. And then we'll see what Minnesota and Oklahoma City are able to put together. But I do appreciate the way that they're playing right now, and they're fun to watch. And I was impressed with Minnesota. Like, their size and their willingness to defend, and they've got guys who are buying in, and they've got, you know, veteran leadership from guys like Mike Conley Jr. Like, I like the makeup and the way that team's put together. It's impressive. It's impressive. But until I see a team prove it come postseason time, I have my doubts, because that's the way it's been for years. You know, you've got to prove that you can get it done in a playoff setting. Because, again, playoff basketball is so different. Because, you know, in the regular season, teams, they don't have time to put together a game plan. You know, they've got scouting reports, but you're playing so many games and you're moving from city to city that they don't, you know, put in an entire game plan on how to attack a team in the regular season. But come postseason time, with all the time they have to prepare and the coaching staffs, they work overtime to put together an entire game plan. And they analyze their opponent, and they discover whatever weaknesses you have, and then they go about trying to expose that in a playoff series. That's why playoff basketball is so different, because they put together entire game plans. They have a plan of attack, and they go out there and try to execute. It's so different than regular season. And I like that detail. And that's why I like these series, you know, the 7-game series, because over the course of a 7-game series, you have a chance to see who the best team truly is. Unlike a football situation where, you know, one game, you know, you can get an upset. But in a playoff series, it's very rare that you see a team with, you know, the lesser team win 4 out of 7. It's just rare because of the amount of time and effort that they put into it.
Bro. You need some knowledge?
I got knowledge. Who is this? I'll take whatever knowledge you got.
It's Jason Kosmiski, the voice of your
Jason.
Nuggets.
My man, what's going on? You're one of my absolute favorites, and I've tried to make you a legend in this town because you delivered one of the greatest yas in the history of yas. Take a listen to this.
Yeah! Oh, yeah, there you go.
How long, Jason, how long have you been at it now?
I want to say this is my 28th year with the Denver Nuggets in some capacity or the other. I want to say 14 as voice of the Denver Nuggets.
That is absolutely terrific. You know, before I moved to the Northwest back in '87, I lived in Denver, and I've still got family there. And what was great back in the day is that all I cared about when I was younger was sports. And so back in the day, you could walk up to McNichols and buy tickets right there at the box office and go in and watch Doug Moe's offense. Man, I loved it.
You know what? And nowadays, like when I want to bring my daughter to a game, I have to physically buy them. I can't
you do? Oh my goodness, I can't believe that. Well, I was just looking at the Nuggets. I love the way they play and the way they execute, and obviously it's all powered by Jokic. But I mean, have you seen a difference with the team this year? It seems like when a team wins a championship and they understand what it takes to get over the hump, that their mental focus is even that much better. What are you noticing this year with the group and with Coach Malone in terms of how they're approaching the season as they try to go back to back?
I have a lot of action in my head right now. Like, can you kill my radio station? Oh, there we go. Okay, Chad, I'm sorry, man. Now I can actually hear you.
Okay.
What'd you say? Okay,
I was wondering, what have you noticed with the team this year? Because, you know, after a team wins a championship, often you'll find that they approach the game differently because they know what it takes to get over the hump. And what have you noticed with Jokic and the group and, of course, Coach Malone as they look to go back-to-back?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question, but I think it goes the other way. You know, I mean, they're missing Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. You know, those were two very significant pieces of this basketball team last year off the bench. I mean, Bruce Brown, I mean, that, you know, no reason he got $20 million a year from, you know, Indiana. It didn't quite work out that way for him once they got there. But, you know, they're missing a couple of big pieces. But here's what I do know. And, you know, sometimes cliches are cliches because they're right. You know what I mean? And
yes.
When I look at the Western Conference, and I'm scared to death of Minnesota, and I'm scared to death of Oklahoma City, but they haven't been there yet. And now I understand what that means. I mean, you have to – there's a lot of want. There's a lot of, you know, whatever – there's a lot of pride. We have to do this. And until you've done all of those things, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. So – you know, I don't know where Denver's going to fall. You know, probably, I don't know, 2, 3, maybe 4. I mean, it's also, you know, it's also mixed up there. But the one thing I do know is that the Nuggets have been there before, and now I understand what that means. Is when people used to say that back in the day when the Nuggets sucked, and people say, well, you've never been there before. Welcome to the playoffs. You've never been there before. But now I understand what that means.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it is. It's a totally different factor. With the Nuggets, who is their unsung hero this year? We know about the star power, but who's the kind of the glue guy, the unsung hero?
Yeah, every team needs one of those, right? For me, in my head, it's KCP. The guy doesn't, you know, he's nowhere near hero basketball. He was the only one that had a national championship or an NBA ring, but before last year, he won one with the Lakers. He doesn't need the basketball. But he just plays, you know, he's an old Georgia boy, man. He's a Southern kid that does things the right way, takes a lot of pride in his defense, and he's one of those guys that, like, if you're a head coach and you're scouting a team and you're getting ready for a team, yeah, there's a lot of big names. I mean, there's Jokic and Murray and Porter, but the guy that's kind of a crick in the neck is KCP because he takes a lot of pride on the defensive end. And takes a lot of pride on playing the right way. So he's basically a Denver Nugget through and through, and basically a guy that you never really hear of.
Yeah, I've got just 2 more questions for you. We're talking with Jason Kosmiski, who is the voice of the Denver Nuggets. Minnesota and Oklahoma City, we just saw the Timberwolves twice at Moda before All-Star break, and I'm impressed with the way they're playing, especially with their size, and I think Oklahoma City's had a terrific season. How do you view those 2 teams when it comes to being legitimate Western Conference contenders?
Yeah, so I go back to the original thing, man. I mean, these guys are a problem. You know, I don't care what anybody says. When the Nuggets won the World Championship last year, I still say that the Minnesota Timberwolves in round 1 were Denver's biggest problem. And if you think about it, you know, the GM that left here, Tim Connolly, They hired him away, and he brings in some Nuggets dudes, and his one entire goal was try and find a way to slow down Nikola Jokic. I'm scared to death of Minnesota. I mean, they have Anthony Edwards, and this guy just doesn't take games off. I mean, and then you have Oklahoma City with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That dude, you can't defend that guy one-on-one. I mean, that guy will get a shot off anytime he wants. Now, I will say this with the Thunder, and they have a great roster, and God bless them, because they've had 2,000 draft picks for like 5 years, and you know what I mean. So,
yes.
and some of them are hitting. You have Giddey that's doing well, and Chet Holmgren that's doing well, but to me they're too young. But I'm scared to death of Minnesota. I think there's an outside chance if they get their mindset right, that to me it's between the Nuggets and the Clippers and the Minnesota Timberwolves, and it's going to be a hell of a playoff run. It's going to be fun to watch to find out who comes out on top on that whole thing.
That's awesome. Who were your early influences, listening to radio or broadcast where you're like, I want to do that? Who influenced you at a young age, Jason?
It's a long story, but I'm going to sum it up for you. What you don't know about me is English is my second language. I moved from Germany when I was about 11 years old. I could not speak a lick of English, and I'm old, like I'm 56, right? But I fell in love with actually radio, like the tool, the physical thing. And I used to listen to, I was enamored, and which is amazing to me because they both have similar speech patterns. I was enamored by Casey Kasem in American's Top 40. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Hi,
amazing.
I'm Casey. Yeah. So I used to listen to that religiously. and then when the power of the local, I grew up in a farm community in Nebraska. So when the local radio station powered down, I could listen to Vin Scully do the LA Dodgers games. And these are basically the two tools that taught me how to speak the American language. God bless them. They're both legends.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you what, man. You're the one guy where me and there's another guy that works for the Trailblazers radio network, Curtis. We go looking for your audio bites. It's like, what did Jason do? What did Jason do? Because we love your call. I think you do a great job, and I'm glad you popped on, man. You're the man, Jason.
Hey, I appreciate you, and I want to let you know the COO of our big giant umbrella finally stepped down, and he's moving on to greener pastures, and so I get to bring back No Relation To, which he hated, but I thought was hilarious. So, for instance, Jamal Crawford is not related to Cindy, and so we're bringing that bad boy back in full force. So I got to look over the roster tonight for Portland and find out who I have around here.
Yes. Yeah! I love it. The voice of the Nuggets, Jason Kosmicki, here on Blazers Game Day. Have a good call tonight, my friend. Great to talk to you.
Hey, we'll talk to you soon, man. Thank you.
There you go. There's Jason. That guy's a stud, man. He's a radio wizard behind the microphone. I love him. Big thanks to Michael Shacker for that. We'll come back with your keys to the game here on Blazer Game Day. I love you, Michael. I love you. Yeah, Plum Tasty's my favorite. Yep. All right, big thanks to Michael Shacker for getting Jason Kosmiski on, the voice of the Denver Nuggets. Been a longtime fan. He does a great call and has great energy. And I didn't know until tonight that English is his second language. That is amazing. And his family came over from Germany when he was 11 years old and fell in love with radio in Nebraska and used to listen to the great Vin Scully at night. All right, keys to the game. I mean, Chauncey Billups summed it up, but tonight it's going to be critical to get back in transition defense and make sure you do a heck of a job with your defensive rebounding so you can control the tempo and play at the pace you want to play at. And I would add into that, make sure that you avoid the live ball turnovers that the Nuggets can turn into easy points. Big props to everyone for their help in Blazers Edge Night. 1,700 tickets were purchased, and now 1,700 kids are going to be able to take part in the game against Atlanta on March 13th. So props to all of you for your efforts there. All right, Curtis Long has got your Trailblazer pregame show coming up next, and then tip-off tonight is going to be at 7. Travis Demers and Michael Holton on the call, and then join me after the game for the 5th quarter right here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Thanks, Michael. Thank you.